You lie! In City Alpha 5 there was life. A fair chance.
This is City Alpha 5!
SETI Alpha 6 exploded 6 months after we were left here.
Well, these things do happen, I guess. I'm no geophysicist, I'm just a viewer with an opinion. "1982 is an amazing year for the science fiction fantasy genre. It gave us E.T., it gave us Blade Runner, it gave us John Carpenter's The Thing, it gave us Poltergeist, it gave us Beastmaster, it gave us Tron. And amidst all that arose the sequel to Star Trek the Motion Picture that would set the standard against which all other Trek films would be measured. A film that came into that market and still broke a box office record for its opening weekend. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, done by two men who had never done anything with Star Trek before, had managed to somehow recapture the feelings that came from the original series, of the camaraderie amongst the crew and the sense of adventure. And it brought back the classic series villain of Khan. Who better to go against Kirk, a man who had stared down a supercomputer that can destroy planets if it wants to, than a super strong, super intelligent, enraged egotist? Khan, the yin to Kirk's yang, with his own obsession, vengeance. A lot happened to get the second film done. Harve Bennett was brought in after Gene Roddenberry was kicked upstairs, with television science fiction work under his belt, and most importantly, a reputation for maintaining a budget, an obvious problem for the first film. Harve went back and watched all the episodes of the original series at least once to understand it, and it inspired the direction he wanted to take the film. He wanted to acknowledge that the crew had aged by specifically focusing on Kirk turning 50 and being surrounded by cadets. It was also his idea to follow up to Space Seed, which he felt provided a perfect antagonist in a story that was practically designed for a sequel. With that underway, the biggest challenge was to get Spock into the picture. You see, Nimoy had had a falling out with Paramount and Gene. He really only did the first film to help get a lawsuit against Paramount resolved, and he wasn't interested in doing anything more with it. But when Harve approached him about appearing in the next movie and dying, he was excited. A good death scene, and a way out of a series he believed was going to be like a lot of other film franchises, with each sequel being worse than the last. So Spock was back so long as he was allowed to die. Harve Bennett had all the pieces in place now except one, which would be crucial to the success of this film. That was writer-director Nicholas Meyer. Nick Meyer sifted through all the previous scripts, lifted out all the good stuff that everyone liked, and pushed everything else aside. He didn't approach the film as some potboiler sequel to get out of the way and move on from. He truly worked to craft a story, and his script was originally considered untouchable. However, word got out that Spock would die, rumored to have been leaked by Gene, who was pissed off at this move, and the fans were irate. In response, Spock's death wasn't removed. It was doubled and shifted. That way, rather than shocking everyone and making them wonder who else could die, like it would originally have been intended, it would be a dramatic climax to the film. And to throw everyone off, Spock would likewise die at the beginning of the film, but it'd just be him faking it and kind of diffuse the issue until they were ready for it to come around again. There are many themes we're going to cover throughout this review, and one of the things about looking at a work of art in any medium is spotting details that may or may not be intended to illustrate a point, but can do so nevertheless. Wrath of Khan has many, most notably Moby Dick, which I will refer to soon enough, but also King Lear and Paradise Lost. As we see, all these books occupy space on Khan's small bookshelf, along with the Bible and Dante's Inferno. Paradise Lost, you might recall, was referenced by Khan when Kirk sentenced him, and that there can be thought of as its first real application. Khan and his followers in Space Seed had rebelled and tried to take control of a starship, but for this crime Kirk cast him down from the heavens to his prison. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Anyway, let's get started. After the opening credits, the film announces, "In the 23rd century." To my knowledge, this is the only Trek film that makes a point of mentioning this to the audience, which is quite a common fixture of science fiction films, and offers a quiet comfort that you don't have to really understand Star Trek will help you out. So we start to pan across the bridge, and the first thing to note is the change in uniforms. Specifically, we finally have some. There's a look of real professionalism about the crew now that was severely lacking in the original, hereafter referred to as TMP. Some people object to this and the likewise naval emphasis of the film, especially Roddenberry. But if you have naval ranks within a naval hierarchy, are on something called a ship, and that ship has weapons and is even now preparing for the possibility of fighting someone, as the Enterprise crew often did or prepared to do in Star Trek, then objecting to it being portrayed as a navy and being military is, well, it's at best being facetious and at worst being childish. If you really insist that it isn't the case, then they need to lose the weapons, and whenever people threaten, just have some woman start hitting a tambourine. Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. So, in the captain's chair we have Kirstie Alley. Fat joke, Scientology joke, etc. We're walking. She's a Vulcan, Savak, and she's being careful to have her ship avoid the neutral zone, which would be a serious breach of the peace with the Klingons, who have claimed this vast area of space that could probably house both a car and a motorcycle if you parked them real close together. However, somehow a ship called the Kobayashi Maru, named after the associate of the famed Kaiser Soze, has managed to get inside the Red Egg of Doom and is calling for assistance, and to rescue them the Enterprise would have to fly in. So they do, but it's either a trap or really bad timing, because they get ambushed by 3 Klingon ships flying straight out of the first movie. A nice bit is that they order raising shields, and we see these little lights appear around the ship graphic. It's a good way of getting that point across to the audience, so that later on, when we see those dots disappearing, we know what's happening. Of course, we know what's happening right now, don't we? A major ass-kicking, that's what. A shot's fired and Sulu's console blows up, killing him. There's a stick of dynamite randomly inserted into consoles, you see. It's a little game captains like to play. That's why they don't have their own consoles. More go up, and soon everyone is dead and the bridge is filled with smoke. The irony of all this? There's a no smoking sign on the bridge. I'm not joking. At this, we hear the voice of Kirk, who makes an appearance at the front of the ship. To continue the Paradise Lost theme, if Khan is the one to reign in hell, then Kirk, being the one he had sought to overthrow, is... Yup, God. Shatner ego joke, we're walking. Turns out that this is all a simulation for trainees, the Kobayashi Maru scenario. Everyone gets up, though Savak is clearly dejected for a Vulcan. She objects to the test on the grounds that there was no possible way to win, just like if she was playing for the '08 Detroit Lions. However, Kirk points out that every captain has to be prepared to face a no-win scenario, and the Kobayashi Maru is now established as one of the film's own themes, that of the no-win scenario.
How we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life, wouldn't you say?
As Kirk goes to leave, McCoy asks about putting an experienced crew on board Enterprise, but Kirk remarks that galloping around the galaxy is a job for the young. You see, this is Kirk's 50th birthday, and aging is another theme of the film. Unlike TMP, the film takes the age of our heroes and embraces it, turns it into a strength, because it ties in with the idea of how we deal with aging and how we face death, as in the Kobayashi Maru. For starters, we don't grow a beard like Grizzly Adams, McCoy. Kirk and Spock discuss things briefly, including his present to Kirk, an antique copy of A Tale of Two Cities. Bones' present is practical, albeit less than flattering. A pair of glasses, since Kirk can't use the 23rd century equivalent of LASIK. His other gift is, well, what you'd expect from Bones.
Romulan ale. Why, Bones, you know this is illegal.
I only use it for medicinal purposes.
It's for weight loss, see? I'm already down to 75 pounds. He also ties back into the only theme running through all Kirk's films, the need to captain the Enterprise. In TMP, he pushed himself back into position. Now it's Bones advising him to go back so that he won't fade away. But hanging in the background is his remark about it being a job for the young. And here we meet the Reliant, NCC 1864, which so happens to be the year of Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth, one of the pioneering works in science fiction. With so many literary allusions in the film, I figured it was worth mentioning. Anyway, seems Chekhov has done pretty well for himself, being made first officer under the always awesome Paul Winfield. They're looking for a lifeless planet for Project Genesis and think SETI Alpha 6 might be useful, so they contact Dr. Marcus. Her son has misgivings about working with Starfleet, but if you want to drop a giant planet-altering bomb, it's probably not something you'll be allowed to do without their involvement. Anyway, she says it's okay if the tiny preanimate matter that they think they've found can be moved, but that requires going down there to check. And no matter what the era, it's always the job to send the senior-most officers down for simple reconnaissance. So Chekhov and Captain Terrell beam down and wander through the sandstorm to a shelter. Inside they find all manner of evidence that this shelter has been assembled into a kind of home from whatever materials were at hand. We see a bookshelf holding Paradise Lost, Moby Dick, Dante's Inferno, King Lear, the Bible, and the real page-turner, Statute Regulating. I don't think even Khan ever got bored enough to finish that one. The sight of a seatbelt with Botany Bay on it makes Chekhov realize where they are, and they rush to leave, but are confronted by the residents.